Hi and welcome. This is the Copycat Stitch podcast. I'm Bailey and I have a lot of knitting and a little crochet to talk about today. I don't know if I should have recorded this today. Maybe I should have waited. I know I have another knitty fix coming today. My husband's going to pick it up for me on his way home from my local yarn store at Nitty Gritty Yarns. But I finished my Semper Slipover and I was wearing it today and I kind of just wanted to film while I had it on because I'm really enjoying it and I think it's super cute. So, like I said, this is the Semper Slipover. This is by the Knit Purl girl. It was a test knit. I did the V-neck version. She's doing a crew neck and a V-neck version. It's got a very nice deep V. I really love it. Super squishy and stretchy. The yarn that I used for this was, I had a couple hanks of a knit crate yarn that was called Audine Wool's Indulgent Sock in the colorway Spa Day. And then I had two hanks of the super gorgeous silk mohair from Ashling Yarns. That was colorway Mountain Mist, I think. So the Indulgent Sock is just a solid tan fingering weight wool blend. It's got to be a blend. But the mohair, it is honestly one of the most beautiful colorways. It's so hard to see it. I'm sure it's not showing up on camera. Every time I try to take a photo of it in the hank, in my swatches, once I had the finished object, it doesn't come out right. It is just this very nuanced, gorgeous little pastel rainbow of honestly purples, blues, greens, pinks. It's so pretty. And honestly, a camera is never going to do it justice. I'm not a professional photographer or videographer. I'm never going to capture it. But it's really beautiful and it's got a huge luscious halo. I don't know how well you can see that on camera, but it's honestly, the halo is like an inch plus away from the slipover. It is so soft and drapey. The only thing that I don't like about it, and I'm sure it's my fault, is that the hem and the sleeves on this slipover both use the tubular bind off, which I've been perfectly adequate at in the past, and I honestly don't know how I've gone wrong. But the last couple projects that I tried to do a tubular bind off on, it's so tight and there's absolutely no give to it. I suspect the only theory I have is because this was wool held double with a mohair, and the silk mohair has no stretch and is completely taut. Maybe I should do that last pass through with the needle with just the wool and not have the mohair. Maybe that's like super obvious, but that never occurred to me, so I did the cast off like I did everything else with both yarns held double. And I think maybe the inelasticity of the mohair is what's causing this. It does cause the hem to sit a little funny on my body. It doesn't, I don't know how well you can see, but it just, because it's very firm there, the rest of the garment could come out a lot further, and it just sits a little strangely on my hips. But other than that, I truly love it. I don't think it's a problem. The armholes and the bottom ribbing are plenty big enough for me to fit into. It's just how I chose to style it with this shirt is a little bit off because it's kind of pulling in on the button down. But like I said, I think that's my fault. Next time I do one like this, I'm going to try cutting the mohair for that last step, and I think that it will be a lot more elastic that way. So I have a couple other finished objects. I have a lot of finished objects and a handful of whips today and almost no acquisitions. I think this is like a good feeling, right? Like this is where you want to be with your knitting, where you have like a lot of projects, but a lot of finished projects, and like, okay, I did a little shopping, but like nothing damaging. Okay, so this one, I know I've shown on the podcast. I don't remember if I showed it as a finished object on the podcast. And I finished it a while ago. But I did finish it just before vacation, and I think I did it after I filmed the podcast. This is the Loveland Shawl by Toni Lipsey, made with two different colorways of organic Merino Sport from Megs & Co. The variegated here is called Public Market, and I'm truly in love with this yarn. Like the feel, the color, everything about it. It's delightful. And then this is the same base in the color American Denim. It's so drapey and so soft. I've used this so many times since I finished it a month ago, and it's technically spring, and it's New York spring, right? I live in upstate New York, so spring is like so far away, and it's still cold. But I've been getting a lot of wear out of this, even though the seasons are changing, and I should be, at least mentally starting to drift away from cold weather wear. I'm not. I'm still planning on starting a couple more sweaters and things. I feel like I didn't get through all of the cold weather knits that I really, really hoped to get through. And I also, I'm not quite bit by the warm weather bug yet. Maybe after we actually have a warm day or two, then I'll feel differently and I'll start busting out the spring knits. But right now, in my head, my next couple cast-ons are still cold weather stuff. I guess we'll see what happens. First, I'm going to try to work through some of these whips that are burning a hole in my project bags. Another finished object I have, which should look familiar if you watched my yarn road trip video when I went to Florida, this is the main project that I worked on. This is my Giza Sweater. It is a kit from We Are Knitters, made in their yarn, the Mixed Organic, which is half cotton and half wool. This is the color gray. So when I originally bought this kit, I bought a size medium. And I have a feeling in retrospect that I was just being cheap, and going up to a size large would have meant adding one more ball of yarn, which increased the price a little bit, which I should have done. This does fit, but in the bust it's definitely got maybe equal, maybe negative ease. And it's just a little more form-fitting than I would like in a sweater like this. I have worn it. It is lovely fabric once it's knitted up. Very soft. And kind of the perfect temperature for this kind of, oh my gosh, kind of the perfect type of fabric for this time of year, because it's really light and it's half cotton, but it's a little insulating. It is a really, really nice fabric and a nice garment to have. I just wish it had been a size bigger. And at the end, I actually did have more than half of a ball left over. This came with 4 balls of yarn, and they're really small. The yarn looks like it's a sport weight, but they have you knit with a worsted size needle. I forget. I think it was a size 8 5mm needle. But it really does fill in. I thought that looked like a ridiculously thick needle for the thinness of the yarn, but it does fill out nicely. And it came with 4 balls, and I used 3.5. And in retrospect, I probably could have just made the medium sized sleeves and large sized body, and I think I would have had enough, because I had, what is that, 13% of my yarn left over at the end. But it's too late now. I'm not going to go back at this stage, but yeah, I do like it. It is a really nice garment. Just not the size I should have bought. I have one more finished object, and this one's cool. I definitely didn't show this one on the last one because I kind of just made it last weekend. I say weekend. It took 4 days. I started it on Thursday, but I finished it over the weekend. I made an entire throw blanket. It's already very popular with my dogs, so please forgive the pet hair. But I had cast-on-itis, and I've been working on the same projects for a long time and really plugging away at them, and I just wanted to do something different, and I wanted to feel productive, and I did so very, very effectively, if I do say so myself. I used 11 full skeins of yarn on this, and I really, really enjoyed doing it. Honestly, like I said, it took 4 days. It's a bulky weight. It's crochet. It worked up so fast, and it really made me feel so productive to see something building up so quickly, to use so many skeins so quickly, especially skeins that have been sitting in my stash for a while that I wasn't really sure what else I would do with. I'm going to have this nice finished object to use. So I don't remember the name of this pattern. I'm sure it's on the screen. It was from Lion Brand, and it's just a granny ripple pattern, but it's with a bulky yarn. Now, it was written for the homespun, Lion Brand homespun, which ironically I actually have a lot of. I have found a lot of Lion Brand homespun, at thrift stores over the last couple years, and weirdly, I have found it in like several shades of purple. So I have tons and tons of Lion Brand homespun in all these different shades of purple. And this pattern, the pattern photo that I'll put up now so you can see it, is literally Lion Brand homespun in like 6 shades of purple. So I probably could have actually made it to pattern from my stash, which is kind of funny. But I wanted to use these colors, which I very much enjoy. It was a lot stiffer when I was working it up than I think homespun would have been, but I steam blocked it and it relaxed very, very nicely, very quickly. So this color at the top is Hue and Me from Lion Brand. These are all from Lion Brand, coincidentally. I just was trying to find a bulky weight granny ripple pattern, but I happened to find one from the maker of all the yarns I had decided to use. And this is Hue and Me in the colorway Saffron, I believe. And then this green in the middle is also Hue and Me. Do not remember the color name. Artichoke, maybe? It's a vegetable. And then this variegated in the middle is Lion Brand Mandala Watercolors in the colorway Almond. So this stripe pattern was not included in the pattern. I believe the pattern was kind of just like a color block, like you just go until you've done so many rows of the one purple and then switch to the next. And I believe it was written for 6 colors. But I just kind of got going alternating, and once I felt like I had used about half of the yarn, I just switched and went back in the other direction. And I think I really like it. Like I said, it just kind of checked that box for me. It just kind of made me feel a little more productive than I have lately, and used a bunch of yarn that's been sitting in stash, and now I feel rejuvenated. And since I finished that, really been plugging away on the projects that I already had going, and I like regained that momentum from just like that little creative outlet of doing one extra quick project. All right, so let's talk about the whips that I already had that I keep referencing. So from most familiar to least familiar, these are mostly the remainder of my road trip whips. If you haven't seen that video, go back and watch it. That was a really fun road trip. I stopped at a bunch of yarn stores. I did a bunch of knitting on the road and in public. And I brought 4 sweater projects with me, one of which was the Giza sweater that I just showed, the finished objects. And the other 3 are all still here in whip stage. This one is nearly done. And in fact, it would be done, except I made a very foolish mistake on it. And I had to rip back a lot. So, which is crazy because this is the simplest sweater imaginable. This is called the Strika Cocoon Cardigan. And it is one of those patterns where you knit a giant rectangle and then you fold it in half and you seam up the sides, partway up the sides, and then you turn those into sleeves, and then it's just kind of open. So I have made my giant rectangle. I have folded it, and as you can see here, it kind of seamed up the side partially. This has become a little sleeve hole. And then this side is also a sleeve hole. This one's in progress. You work a little cuff on it, and then at the end, you go back around this main body edge and do ribbing. So that one's going to take a little while, but it's very bulky yarn, very big needles. It won't take that long. The very foolish mistake that I made was I got a little cocky and I was like, it's such a simple sweater, and I was flying through it. And when I got to the fold the rectangle in half and seam the side stage, instead of seaming here, I seamed here, which makes no sense. So then I had an exceptionally large armhole on the sides that was twice the size it was supposed to be, but then the body hole was like way too small. And I didn't notice until after I had knit both of the arm cuffs in the wrong spot. So that was really silly of me, and when I realized my mistake, I was very annoyed because it was exactly 1 full day's worth of work, and it was like in the evening that I realized the mistake and then just had to rip back everything I'd done the whole day. But I did what I always do, which is I'm mad about it, but I rip it back and then I take a little step forward. I know it can be so tempting in that moment when you're so angry at yourself and at the project to just like set it aside, but I know myself, and if I set it aside in its incorrect, infuriating state, I will not want to come back to it. It'll just be this like daunting thing that I don't want to do, where I have to face my own demons. So instead, what I did was I took a few minutes and I ripped out the arm ribbing on both sides and I unseamed it on both of the incorrect seams, and then I just redid the seams in the correct spot, and then I set it aside, because that way in my head it's a little bit better, because instead of doing a whole day's work and then just undoing a whole day's work, I did a whole day's work and I undid a whole day's work, and then I made a little bit of progress. So net gain, I feel better about it, and that did definitely make it easier to come back to it and pick it up another day. Not that I've gotten much farther since I did that, but you know, it's not a point of contention. It's not something I was dreading. It's just something I needed a little bit of a break from, and then it was easy to come back to. My next road trip whip, this is the fuzzy vest, made out of We Are Knitters, the fuzzy yarn, I don't remember what it's called. The fuzzy yarn. And this is also by the Knit Purl girl, the same designer who designed this vest that I'm wearing. However, this, I made like the entire vest part when we were on the road on vacation, and then I decided I would really rather it had sleeves, and I had almost half of my yarn left over after making the entire body, so I decided to add sleeves. Will the sleeves end up being a game of yarn chicken? Probably. I think the style of sleeve I chose was a little ambitious for the amount of yarn I had, but we're going to see what happens. I haven't made much headway on this one lately because it is a very, very tedious stay on Sleeve Island. This is a big circumference and it's just stockinette forever. But eventually I will finish it. I do want to have the finished object, and I did talk about this in the other video, but the neck is very wonky and I do need to add some elastic thread to kind of cinch it up and just make it sit right. Audrey, must you snack right now? You're crunching on the podcast. I hope you can't hear her. She's between the dogs barking and the cat eating, like it's not going very smoothly. Okay, this is my last road trip whip. This is the Bright Side pullover. And I have split for sleeves. Every other time I've showed it, it's been like a tiny scrunched up yoke on the needle. So I finally got to the point where I split for sleeves, and I've done, I don't know, like 2 or 3 inches since then. So you can kind of see the form of a sweater. It's very sheer right now. This is an undyed tweed in a fingering weight from the wool room at Longmeadow Farm. I always start to look and then remember what it's called, which it's a long name. It's a yarn I bought at a regional little yarn show that I went to last month. It's really lovely. It is more sheer than I had anticipated, but I do think it'll bloom a little bit with blocking, and either way, I always tend to wear something under my sweaters, but it's very pretty. There's just so much tweed, like in a good way. I really do like this, and it's another, I don't know if you've noticed the pattern with what I showed today, but I am really, really sticking to my guns about making neutral garments and basic garments, because I think my wardrobe lacks that a lot, and I think this is going to be like as basic as it gets. It's just a plain raglan stockinette pullover made in undyed yarn, and it's so stretchy and squishy, and I love it already. It's going really fast for me and a fingering weight knit. Like honestly, I usually really get burnt out on them and don't work on them very much at a time and let them sit for long periods. But this one I keep coming back to and working on more and more. And I think it's the yarn, honestly. It's a really calming knit, and it's really enjoyable quality yarn to work with, and I really like it, and that's why I keep picking it up. And I also keep picking it up because this whip is a nightmare. Let me recount to you why I am making this particular project that I'm about to show you. This is because my husband, who never wears neckties, he works at an office where he should probably wear neckties, but he doesn't because he doesn't really like them, has been bothering me to knit him a necktie for a long time. And like, why? You don't wear neckties. Whatever. His birthday's coming up, and he keeps pestering me about the necktie, so I figured I will. I was watching a knitting podcast on TV, and they were discussing men's patterns or men's accessories patterns or something like that, and they mentioned this pattern for a tie, and he was enthusiastic about it, and it's a free pattern. It's called the Nuffield tie. Okay, I'll make that. And I asked him, hypothetically, if I was going to make you a tie, what color would you want it? Keep in mind, this is a fingering weight, linen stitch necktie. And the man says black. Like, hard no. I am not knitting a fingering weight, black yarn, linen stitch necktie. That is literally the most tedious thing I can imagine. So, instead, we settled on green. I'm hoping he's forgotten this conversation by now. I don't think he's expecting it for his birthday, but he might be. I'm not very far along, but I have only worked on this for 3 different sittings. And blessedly, it just gets narrower. So at least the people that wrote the pattern had the forethought to realize that nobody would ever finish this thing if it started at the narrow end and got bigger. At least like every row gets faster. So it's a very slow decrease. It's every couple of inches you decrease 2 stitches, and then you do a couple more inches. So it looks comically large, like Fred Flintstone's tie. It's not. This one, once you finish, you actually kind of like fold it in half, but you fold the back, whoops, this is difficult on the needles, to meet in the center like this, and you seam up the center back and then block it. So I think I will be able to block it to a nice crisp point, but right now it's a little wonky along the edge. But yeah, it's not a comically large clown tie. It is going to be a rather narrow tie actually once it's seamed up like this. But the linen stitch in the fingering weight is really unpleasant. And if I didn't love this guy, man, this is a nightmare. I'm making it out of Evergreen by Hobbii. It's actually really nice yarn. I've never worked with it before. It's recycled recycled wool, I think. Just kidding. It's organic wool. I don't know why I thought it was recycled. Oh, it's like organic fair trade stuff. I guess I just had like that eco branding on it. I just assumed it was recycled. It's not. That's why it's so nice. It's not recycled. It's organic wool. And this is the color Evergreen, which Josh says his favorite color is British Racing Green, which is a car thing, and I don't really do car things, but I looked up British Racing Green and it was kind of close to this, so this is what we're going with. His birthday is March 31st. So we've got like a week and a half to finish this, which is probably tight, but I have been working on it for a while every day, and like I said, it narrows. So at a point, like maybe I'm only doing 2 or 3 inches a day, but like as it narrows, those inches will get longer. It's still going to be a slog at the end. I'm doing what I can. It is honestly a tedious pattern that I knew I was going to hate from the beginning, but he's been begging for it for so long, and it's his birthday. Ugh. So, since I was doing an order from Hobbii, you know me, can't pay for shipping. Like, that yarn was like less than $10 to get the yarn for the tie, and then I'm going to pay $9.99 in shipping. Like, it just goes against every fiber of my being. I had another project in mind coming up that I knew I was going to want to cast on in, I think, April. I think early April. If you've been with the channel for a little while, you know that Josh and I love baseball. We go to a lot of baseball games, and I always knit at baseball games. We live in Syracuse, so most often we go to Syracuse Mets games, which is the AAA affiliate of the New York Mets. I'm a Yankees fan, born and bred. I am not a Mets fan, but I was raised to always support your local sports teams, as long as it's not the Red Sox. So I've had this project in mind since I knit at every Syracuse Mets game anyway. I thought, what if I knit myself like something Syracuse Mets themed? So I have plans to make myself a little sports themed cardigan that I'm going to cast on and work on at ball games this year. I'm very excited about that. I got Twister Solid in these 3 colors, which I think are perfect for the Mets, and then just this neutral gray to go with it. I'm not going to disclose what pattern I'm going to make or what I'm planning to do now because I'm sure I'll make a video about it. But just know this is coming. I'm very excited. I love a theme. I love a theme. So then between the Twister Solid and the Evergreen, is that what it's called? I said it's the colorway Evergreen, but it's the yarn name too, isn't it? Wow, okay, that's the yarn name. So the color is 25. I don't know what that is. However, between the Evergreen and the Twister Solid that I got, I was most of the way to free shipping, but not quite. So I went through the sale section and I picked out a couple quantities of neutral yarn that I can use in upcoming months. So this was a 10-pack of Black Friday cotton. It's just a very soft cotton, but it's not mercerized. It's got a little edge to it, but it is overall very soft. This is the color 3. I don't know. It's just like a tan, a beige. I figured once summer, spring roll around, I'm going to want to make more cotton and linen garments like I do every year. Like a large quantity of a nice neutral like this might make a nice summer like crochet cardigan or something. I don't know. I don't really have plans. I don't have any ideas for it yet. I just know I'm going to want it when the weather warms up. And then this was just an exceptional deal for the price. This is the Black Friday sock yarn. I don't know the colors, but there's this kind of off-white beige and then this pale purple. Very pale grayish purple. This was a pack. They had a bunch of different colors, but it was these quantities in these colors, right? You had to pick from pairs of colors. You can't pick individual colors, and they only come in this 4-pack, but it was really inexpensive for what it is. And it's 75% wool, 25% polyamide. So it's a sock yarn. I don't personally make socks ever, but I make things with sock yarn. And I mean, they're neutrals, right? That's the name of the game. Is if I'm gonna add to stash, it better be neutral. Okay, that's everything. Like I said, it feels really good. I have 4 finished objects. I have whips. I have a lot of whips. I mean, I showed you 4 today, but I still have that basket downstairs of the ones that have been sitting around for months that I've barely worked on. I'm really cold on them right now, and I'm like forcing myself to leave them out in the open, so I have to look at them and at least feel the guilt emanating off of them and not just like forget about them and shove them in a closet. But I'm not pressuring myself to work on them either. I have to walk that fine line. Trying to wrap up more of these before I cast on new things, but I do have a lot of new things in my heart that I know I want to do soon. So, yeah. I hope you had fun going through my stuff with me. I feel like I was a little quicker today. Was I quicker? I think, like, I always think that I went quicker, and then every time I was filming for like 42 minutes, and then I edit it down to be like 38. I don't know why, but time just flies when I'm recording this, and I'm always so sure, like, oh, this podcast is only going to be 20 minutes long, and then it's 38 minutes every time. I don't know. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you're working on, and if you have moved on to spring knits or you're still stuck in winter like me. Maybe the weather's nicer where you are, and maybe the weather's nicer where you are, and you don't have to be stuck in winter like me. Either way, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please click the like button down there. It really helps my channel grow. And if you enjoyed this podcast, maybe subscribe. Check back next time for future podcasts and other yarny videos. I've always got more in the works. So for now, thanks for hanging out today and every time. And I will see you in the next one. Bye. Are you done? Are you done? This is the culprit. This is Audrey. She keeps moving the camera. She keeps having snacks while we're filming. Is that appropriate? No.